Hey, welcome to this episode of Next Creators podcast. Our guest today is Chloe Lewis, founder of Marma J Foundation, an organization supporting social good initiatives in the Web3 space. Chloe spends most of her time educating communities about various Web3 topics, supporting creators by onboarding them into the Web3 space, and developing ways to provide more support with fewer resources. Chloe has a passion for learning, teaching, and giving back to the communities that she finds herself a part of. With support from the Near Foundation, Chloe is building out functionality for DAOs within the Near ecosystem to more efficiently organize and manage their communities and the treasuries that sustain them. Thank you for being on the podcast.
Oh, thank you for having me. You make me it sounds so good when read out loud. Wow. Thank you. It's glad to be here, honestly.
Cool. So maybe we can start with uh, your background because you have like pretty atypical background for the space. So, what was your passions growing up? Where did you grow up, and how did you end up in Web3?
Awesome. We're starting from way back. Honestly, I was just a typical nerdy athlete. I played soccer, football, from like the age of like 2.5. I played my whole life, three different teams at one point when I was a bit older. And I also played endless hours of MMORPGs. That was just my life. I'd get up, go to school, play soccer from like 3 p.m. to like 10 p.m., and then I'd game all night long. And that like building online community was kind of what kept me going. I went to a school very far from home, like a private school. I didn't have a lot of like friends in a community close to home. I was mainly raised by like a single parent, and so a lot of the community that I was able to build and sustain through whether I was home or whether I was away at school or whether I was away living somewhere else, the online communities persisted always growing up. I played on different teams. I was always changing the players I was with. So for me, I loved the sport. I loved how you could hone your skills in a certain area, and it didn't really matter where you went around the world. I can go on a beach somewhere in the Caribbean, or I can go to Europe and just start go to a new school. And as long as I had this skill set of playing soccer, playing football, I could make friends anywhere. And so as I went to college and played soccer there, and I ended up traveling around for a while. I realized that while I do love the sport, um, I'd like to potentially build community that had to do with more than just one certain theme. Um, and so I decided to kind of just I don't know. Well, for me, it was kind of figuring that out. I decided to kind of go and do that research and figure out how could I efficiently build communities, or how can we efficiently build communities, so that anyone anywhere in the world can not feel alone, and they don't have to necessarily be online. They don't have to necessarily be a gamer. They don't have to necessarily play soccer, but they could still find an interest and come together and efficiently build. And then a couple of years went by. I ended up doing like my master's in sports psychology. So my thesis was like social support and injury prevention. Just the idea that the more we support each other, the better, the more it benefits our life in a variety of aspects. Specifically for like elite performance, like when you're trying to attain like a top performance, the more support you have, if you could achieve like 1% higher, goals, then that can end up being quite large when you're a professional athlete. And so, obviously translating that to the crypto space, I found I started working for a project. Uh, you know how it is. You start working in the crypto space, you start working for different people. So around 2017, I kind of just fell in love with Ethereum. Everyone has like their own aha moment, their own project in 2017-ish time, in my opinion. If they came in around there, the ICO boom, there was infinite white papers. I think that's what kind of drew me in. I realized that wow, this is pretty cool. For the first time, I was just seeing anyone and everyone's idea just plastered over the internet. And I'm sure it's happened before in like the .com era. I understand, but here I felt like it was just communities rallying together behind ideas. And then into 2018, when the market started to kind of cool down a bit, you started to see how communities were actually what rallied some of these projects on. Some projects that had no business continuing in the space were able to kind of revamp themselves, revitalize themselves just because of their communities, just because of the support that the communities were able to provide. Um, and so kind of through this wild ICO boom, through working as like a technical analyst for an individual who was trying to invest, I was reading, I was probably 10 hours, 12 hours a day, just reading through papers, going into Telegram groups, going into channels, trying to talk to community members, see if projects were worth investing into. And at the end of the day, it kind of became, is there a community? Is there a team, a dev team who's going to sustain this project even if funding runs out, or there's a bear market that where things aren't always positive all the time. And so through the 2018 craziness to the 2020 things where things started to kind of get a little more normal again. Um, I kind of was start helping out with a project that had a relatively strong community, and they were getting into crowd raising online. So this was like in the maybe a little bit past Ether Delta days, and maybe around a little bit past like the proof of weekends. I don't know if people know, like pre Uniswap though. So we were trying to figure out ways to have like projects that could like set up these like smart contracts where people could like put funds and put ETH inside. All at that point in time, all we really had was ETH, and then you could have people like crowd fund your idea. And we were trying to figure out ways to do this. And through this, I was like, "Okay, we're going to go to Antigua. We're going to start the Marma J Foundation. We're going to figure out how to build a community and go help out." So this was in 2019, around September. I kind of just like, had all my crypto doing all its thing. I have a little crypto project. And arguably the bear market just killed us. So we had our project built on a centralized exchange, arguably. Like the project was a DApp, but it was to like support, it's almost like building a DApp to support Binance back in the day. So like a lot of the liquidity from the DApp was in Binance, and basically this exchange just shut its doors. So one day they were just like, "Yeah, we sold our company. Um, Go here to get your assets. Go call support." Have not heard. I mean, they messaged back, but it's been like quite a few years now, and no mention of returning funds. So the project pretty much just died overnight. We were in Antigua, kind of running the beginnings of the Marma. So my now fiance and I were in Antigua, running the beginnings of the Marma J Foundation, feeding stray dogs, cleaning up beaches, getting to know people down there, um, and we had to move back and kind of just rebuild, which was kind of, I don't know. Looking back, I am appreciative for the experience of like having to start from scratch, take things a lot more seriously. So like that, like I went through like I definitely started learning to code at that point in time. I was like, okay, like I can't trust. I definitely had a larger distrust. I already didn't really trust centralized services before, but then I became okay. No, this is why we need like decentralized tech. Like I'm not really much of a, I wouldn't myself like a degen in any sense, but I think DeFi is so very important because if a project can't take their grant funding and swap it to a stablecoin in a safe, decentralized manner, they probably won't be able to build through multiple bear markets. Just not going to happen. And so as we're breaking things down now, and not every project is this multi-million or multi-billion-dollar token raise, it's more like these small teams who might have just come together over a weekend and set up a DAO or won a hackathon, and now they have like 5K in their DAO, and they're like, okay, well, this is kind of make or break it. Are we actually gonna keep building for the next few months, or did the token price go down 60%? So let's just go do something else. We have a real job. We have kids. Like people can't just like I was lucky enough after this to kind of just come back home, pull out, took a little bit of ETH I had left. I think it was like 1.5 ETH. I don't know, like a few ETH at the time. Sold that, bought a laptop, borrowed like $30 from my mom or something like that, $100 from my mom, and I was like, "Mom, I'm taking Eat the Blocks DAP 30 course because it was like you can build 30 DApps in 30 days. And I was like, hey, I don't have much money. Project kind of blew up, but if I can build 30 DApps in 30 days, I can probably build a small little project again and just get a community together, and we can maybe get something done eventually. Um, it was pretty crazy. I would not. I mean, I don't know. It was fun. It was intense. It was insane. I was not a dev. I was like doing free code camp for like I don't know, 4 or 5 hours a day for maybe 2 months before this. So I was, working my way through JavaScript and Redux. I don't know, all the crazy stuff you do on free code camp. And I was like, you know what? This isn't enough for me. Like I'm doing this Web 2 stuff and it's great, but I want to just jump into Web 3. So I signed up, jumped into their Discord, started learning whenever I had a question, which was like every 5 minutes. I would just go Google it or ask someone. And a few, like, after the first month, I ended up, earning enough through various like just crypto things to be able to, keep learning through online resources. And I don't know, life was kind of crazy, and I somehow went back to it. I did had a Gitcoin grant through all of this. I kind of just started to try and just keep do crypto stuff. So I was doing, I got, I went, actually, I went to, oh my gosh, I forgot about that. I was like, you know what? I need to just get a degree in computer science because I got to keep learning. So I found a degree where it was like a year and a half, and I can just, because I already had a degree, it was a year and a half, and I can just get a computer science degree. So I moved out to like Windsor, Ontario. I started taking classes, but because of COVID, it all went online. And so I was loving like the discrete mathematics, and I was loving all the stuff. And so actually, I always remember Dr. Ben Sasson changed my life from Starkware. He had a Stark at Home series where he taught cryptography, like discrete mathematics, like very high level cryptography for free, just on Crowdcast. And so I joined that, started asking questions. He would just answer them. It was an insane. We started with like 6 people at the beginning, and it became like hundreds by the end of the summer. And I got offered a job after asking a question in one of those chats, like a week before midterms, to do validator privacy research, like be an intern for Hashcloak, run by Makira in Toronto. Actually, they do like blockchain research there. So basically, I just dropped out of school. I went out to a cabin for a couple of weeks and just read cryptography papers for like 60 hours a week. Earning, I was getting paid $20 an hour in DAI to read cryptography. I was like, this is the best dream I could ever imagine. So yeah, I did that for 4 or 5 months. And then through that, I saw that Mintbase, Nate from Mintbase went over to Near. And I thought Mintbase was actually one of the coolest things ever at the time, where you could just like have your own smart contract without coding on Ethereum back in the good old days. That was like mind blowing. And so I was like, oh, cool. Like, I don't know what this Near thing is, but um, if I can go to a new blockchain and just build a smart contract without coding, I don't mind testing that out. Uh, Read the papers, of course, because at that point I was a research intern or just coming off of that. So the first thing I would do at a new project was I wanted to read the consensus algorithms and see how they, because again, for me, it's about how we as communities kind of support each other, which in my opinion means if we can agree faster, we could probably support each other quicker. If we can verify that someone is trustworthy or not trustworthy quicker, we can probably get into agreements quicker, or realize, okay, this is not trustworthy, I'm going to do something else. And we can actually grow quicker and change and repeat and like, experience things quicker and grow. So I was like, oh, cool, like 1 second block times. I was like, okay, we can iterate over things pretty quickly over here. And I was like, oh, dynamic resharding. Like if they can actually do that, that'd be pretty cool, because like we're not just building the roads and continuing to build forever, but they actually get like wider and smaller as I know it's a very simplistic way of thinking about it, but I'm like, that's kind of cool. We're not just building infrastructure forever just to build it, but like, what if something happens and like we're in like a 10-year bear market and we don't need as much infrastructure? we can just it'll just wind down on its own. I was like, cool, like maybe we could, like I don't know. So I got really geeked out by all that stuff. And I was like, hey, I want to do research here. I don't know. So I don't know. I was just like, I would love to be a protocol researcher at Near. So I honestly just jumped into the education. I just like went to near.org, looked for the education side of things. I think that Sharif had like a near 101 and a 102. I started with 102, just kind of went through it, got stuck, found a bug like 10 minutes in. I was like, what do I do? But there was a little link, like, if you have any issues, talk to this person. I was like, okay. Um, and yeah, honestly, that was kind of just the spiraling ball of working for the Near Foundation. I somehow got tasked with running a hackathon. I don't understand how that happened, but I was like, hey, if I'm going to run a hackathon, I have to know what I'm doing. So I decided to submit a project, and I was like, let's revitalize the Marma J Foundation. Um, so I just spun up a DAO, spun up a token using a previous hackathon project like Token Farm, uh, started using the Near Forum to post bounties to just help where I saw a need in the Near community. And yeah, now 2 days ago, May 24th, 2022, we are officially a nonprofit in Canada. Uh, and yeah, we have our first in-person event in a couple days, and yeah, we're just keep trying to learn. Yeah.
That's amazing. So maybe we can yeah, double click on the foundation. So first of all, like how did you come up with the name?
Yeah, great question. So, Marma is a term for mother in many, I guess, cultures, but specifically in Antiguan culture, maybe 60 odd years ago. And my grandmother in Antigua was very supportive of her family and her local community. And so everyone would call her Marma, and her last name was Joseph. So everyone would call her Marma Joseph. And so in my life, she's been kind of the rock that supported me. She raised me for most of my life. When I was 14, she sent me to France because I wanted to go play soccer and learn the language. And she was by no means wealthy. I mean, she was like a single parent of four, and a principal in like an inner city school. So like, but for her family, she always found a way to find the resources and provide that support. And so the idea was I wanted to always remind myself to try and embody that with everything I'm doing. But then also to try and expand that not to just my family, or just the idea that everyone is my family. I know it's kind of cheesy and corny, but I do truly believe that I mean, it is the case. We're all, and I think in the Web3 space, you see it a lot. We're all trying to do kind of the same things, just in our own way. And I love the blockchain personally because it doesn't matter what we're doing. We're all paying the gas fees in the same token. We're all, building on the same network. And in this new, cross-chain, multi-chain, present, all boats rise and sink together, which is pretty cool.
Hmm. And maybe you can walk through the audience through the different components of the foundation.
Yeah. So as I said, we now have the legal nonprofit, um, which is registered in Ontario, Canada, and serves as like I guess, for lack of a better term, I don't like the term, but the legal wrapper for the Marma J Foundation and what we do. So this allows us to interface with Web2 communities. It allows us to, for example, receive funding from a grant and then distribute it to a charity. Like just something as simple as that is now possible for us, which is super cool. Like we've been raising funds for a while and haven't really had a official way to just go to a Web2 charity and distribute funding. We also have the Marma J DAO, and that is our community tool that we use to manage the community's assets. So we have a main core council, which consists of myself, Chloe.near, my fiance and co-founder, Bianca.near, and it consists of a management account, MarmaJ.near. So it gets kind of a little bit maybe potentially complex on like the governance side of things, but the idea is we have a community treasury where we're able to manage assets, NFTs. We have hundreds and hundreds of NFTs we've collected from the community in our DAO. We have assets throughout the community in fungible tokens that we use to send to like ref the decks for our token farm, for example, each month. And so that's our community funds. And then we have Marma J Near, which serves as our individually owned management account, where we can actually like invest in other projects, for example, which I guess now it's I guess open. So like for example, we invested in Aurora, and so the funds are held on the Marma.near account and managed there. So as we experiment with, for example, how do we interact with DeFi through our DAO? We don't just jump in first and run in with our DAO and do things. We generally would test, hopefully on testnet first, then move to, say, Marma J.near, an individually owned account, and experiment with potentially playing around with Burrow or some other like lending platforms. And then we kind of go to the DAO and try and see what we can do with our community treasury. And then arguably, we also do have Marma.eth. So we do have assets on the Ethereum side, like the crypto voxels parcels, some Ethereum for gas, and we do interact with the Rainbow Bridge in that way. So we do kind of, and this I think is important because we're able to support kind of the Ethereum ecosystem, which again also support a wide number of communities, even though we're building our community on Near. So if there is a community that we want to fund on either layer one Ethereum or some layer two Ethereum platform, we could then use our DAO, distribute funding to marmaj.near, distribute funding across the Rainbow Bridge to marmaj.eth, and then distribute funding. We have accounts on like Polygon, Avalanche, not Avalanche. I've never actually used Avalanche actually, but a lot of other blockchains to make sure that we can hopefully reach communities where they are.
Hmm. That's cool. And how do you think about social good and potential for Web3 to really move a needle there?
So this ability for individuals and communities to come together and be able to own what they interact with and what they define as social good, I think that is what truly pushes the needle and like changes what we're able to do together. And so for me, for example, I always try and break things down to either what I'm used to or like what we interact with daily. So like whether I'm a pretty hardcore video gamer, or I guess used to be. So in my opinion, I think of something as simple as playing a video game like World of Warcraft, for example, getting party matched with random players from around the world, coming together to overcome some obstacle, and at the end of this kind of campaign or period of time where you're working over to overcome this goal, you achieve some reward. And so, but the only problem with so we all do this around the world. We get into community sports teams and we work hard all season to try and win a championship, or we get into companies to try and win at the capitalistic society of earning lots of money. But either way, it's been proven that humans get into communities and overcome obstacles and try and it's just for fun. It's just what we do. We enjoy it. But the ability to fund that and sustain that, I think, is what changes things. I remember growing up and again being on multiple soccer teams, and I remember my single parent having to work multiple jobs to be able to fund all of these wonderful activities that I got to do. And a lot of my friends didn't have those opportunities. I was blessed to be a single child, at least from my mother, and so she was able to support me quite a bit. And again, my grandmother was able to raise me and support me a lot as well. So I was very blessed, but I got to see a lot of my peers and a lot of my friends didn't have those opportunities of support. And it's kind of interesting where maybe if we were able to build in a system where parents maybe were able to own part of the teams that their kids were playing on, not even for owning to earn something. I feel like the idea of ownership isn't always just to earn some like large sum of money or get rich. It's just to have some buy-in in what's happening. So, for example, if you know that as you buy into this soccer team this year in 2020, that in 2025, when they choose the larger trip to go on, you're going to have some voting stake in what happens. Maybe you're more willing to kind of come together and get involved in the bake sale to raise some funds in what's happening. And so you can already do this with Web 2. You can have some app that saves your data and tracks who does what best on the bake sale and gives them some points. But then how do you trust that in 3 years that app still exists, or the team that's building that app has enough runway to continue it? And I know, again, it's a very small example of just this community soccer team that wants to go on a trip in 3 years. But if if we don't have tools that the community soccer team can afford, then we're probably not doing a good enough job. And so Web3 allows teams of any size, whether it is a community soccer team, whether it is a team of 8 or going into a party to defeat a raid boss, or whether it's a multi DAO who's trying to like take over DeFi and like build the future of finance. Either way, you have these tools that are arguably, well, they cost the same for everybody. So, for example, doing a view call on the blockchain, costs the same for everyone. Anyone can learn to program. Anyone can, the API is open to everyone. And so this ability and when these tools get built, so again, I think Astro DAO is one of the coolest things because um, as tool projects like Burrow, like Ref Finance, like Aurora, build on a tool like Astro, for example, you allow smaller communities and smaller projects to be like, okay, well, I guess we can throw 10 grand into our tool because we know that there's larger ecosystem partners that are also using the same tool. And if there's any issues that they come across, they're going to make sure they get fixed, and it's going to support all of us. And so I think this is the difference here where everything's open. The tools that get built for the largest are also open to the smallest. And so, no matter who you are in the Web3 ecosystem, you do have that buy in. Because even if you're just someone who's, buying and selling NFTs a few times, you're paying some gas fees to the protocol. And you're helping these projects get built so that in 3-4 years, when the next biggest game gets built on Near and they have party matchmaking through some really cool algorithm that's built, using storage of past interactions on Near from people, for example, and what dApps they've been using. You know that you helped build that in some way, and maybe you just helped in your small way by buying the art that you liked, that where the splits of royalties went to the charities that you liked, or maybe you were there as a founder or a builder, and you were there 12 hours a day coding your project. But either way, we're all able to build together, which I think is super cool.
Yeah, that's super interesting. In terms of ownership, yeah, I'm curious. Like, how when do you think we're gonna start? Well, when we're gonna start seeing some of the offline world interacting with Web3 as it relates to ownership? So, for example, when do we see when the new soccer club that gets formed actually is owned by the like local city?
See, see, this is funny because hopefully soon. So I guess there's two ways that I see it happening. So there's there's this Web 2 team, like 99.99% of them, right? They've been doing the things they've been doing for a while, but you can buy a team. So you can just set up a DAO, raise some funds, try and buy a team, and there you go. You have a Web 3 team. I'm not I think it's cool. I think it's awesome. I think we should experiment with all different types of like ownership models in this Web3 world that we're moving into. What I think is much more interesting potentially is kind of the way you worded it actually just now. Was when are we going to see like these teams kind of built in Web3? So to me, for example, I did my master's in Antigua with the Antiguan Youth National Team. And so I was kind of interviewing the kids there and asking them about their social support systems and all of that. And through that, I got to meet the current men's national team head coach. And they're actually looking to potentially start a professional team somewhere in the States or Canada. And so we've been talking about what it might look like to potentially, get that supported by potentially the Marma J Foundation, or at least some Web3 funding in some way. And I think it's different when you're doing it from the ground up as a Web3 project, because you're able to do things that you're not able to do when there's tradition or
Old incentive system.
yeah, there's an old incentive. Yeah, old incentive is a great way of putting it. People are incentivized to do what they've been doing, but when you're able to start something new, you're able to really start from the ground up. So maybe that's a bit of alpha there. We haven't gone too much into that yet. Discussions wise, we are in the process of getting some land up here in Canada for the Marma J Foundation, and hopefully that will allow that to go through. But in terms of like actually, I think the legal aspects of it was what makes it really difficult, honestly. So touching like Web3 and token, I know like crypto.com, for example, is probably like the largest player in my opinion so far, and just being like, hey, we're like on their app, you can have like tokens for like teams and stuff, but only in certain jurisdictions. So they're really trying to like figure out how to work with these teams, these legacy teams, and make sure incentives are still aligned, and introduce tokens and NFTs, which I think is again super cool. But I think where we're going to see actual like Web3 owned real life products is with like grassroots, like community ownership, where some people are like, hey, we own this product in our community. We own this co op. We own this coffee shop. We own this um, whatever it is. Let's manage it through a DAO. We think this tool is effective and useful. And I think that's what we're still missing for most people, is getting enough people to think that these tools are effective and useful, even if they are, which I'm not sure we're there yet for most people. I think we're still, personally, I'm so bullish on the tech, but I do still think that for most projects, we still are in the experimental phase. And so, trying to tell a project, hey, we're ready to launch right now on mainnet, you can do it, I think is a bit disingenuous. But if you're telling people, hey, you can build a project right now, you can build your community out, you can start experimenting with this tech, and you can start building out what your project might look like, whether it's even 3 months down the line, 6 months down the line, I think that's realistic. And smaller teams that want to build something, whether again experimenting with the tech, experimenting with the community, I think that's awesome. Um, I just think that a lot of times people think that just because there's billions of dollars of market cap in something, that a $1 billion company can just move onto the blockchain with a snap of their fingers. But I'm sure, Sasha, it takes like years and years of dev work and community building and uh, painstaking effort to actually get a product launched on mainnet, in my opinion, that actually is useful for a large community. So, but I think it's worth it. It's been super fun so far for the Marma J Foundation.
Hmm. I was wondering also, like, as the space moving like really fast in Web3, two things related to this. One is, how do you stay up to speed? So how, like, what do you have, like daily routine, weekly routine, or like it's kind of like free flow? Number one, and number two is like, how do people avoid like burnouts?
Oh, that is okay. The second question is juicy. So, first question, how do I stay up to date? So, I consider myself mostly a researcher still, even though I do a lot of community building, which I do love. But I try every morning, like Monday to Friday, to actually live stream and like record myself going through near ecosystem projects. So it really helps me because I mean, again, Sasha, I'm sure you know, but UIs for projects are changing weekly. Teams are pushing hot fixes constantly. If you use enough dApps daily, you'll find quite a few bugs, and it really does help you learn how dApps are built, how teams go and fix problems, and it really helps me learn like how people are building on chain to solve problems. So that's been super fun. And then as I do this, I get better at interacting with dApps. And so I'm adding more and more dApps to what I do daily. And I'm kind of testing myself. Like I use a ledger for all of it too. And so if anyone's used the ledger on Near, it's an interesting experience, but I kind of love kind of going through that as well and recording it and kind of just digging into, again, how do dApps build UX for teams that might have to use a ledger, for example. So larger teams aren't going to keep all their funds on a hot wallet. They're probably going to use a ledger. And so if they have a ledger, for example, as a DAO account, you can't even sign certain transactions. So this is like one specific example where like we had to build our DAO in a certain way with certain people on Treasury and a certain amount of hot wallets and a certain amount of like ledger accounts because of things like this. And so if we're like speaking to a team who has specific needs, we need to make sure we've interacted with all of these dApps with a ledger and the hot wallet and everything else. Although we have not tested enough 2FA, I will admit that. But yeah. Um,
And on the second part,
so the second part, how do I not get burnt out? I take an insane amount of breaks. I'll be honest. So burnout for me was just what I lived in, honestly. Like so that time period where I came back from Antigua, project shut down, I was learning to code. I just lived in constant burnout, but it was like purposeful. I think that there's a time and a place for just pushing through a project. I think actually Nate from Mintbase is where I saw this as well in person, which was super cool. When he was trying to launch Mintbase on Near, he was just like, "Yeah, I'm burnt out every day, but we've got to launch and we're going to keep shipping." And I was like, "Yeah, let's go!" Like that's super cool. But also, there's a time and a place for understanding that you're burnt out and taking that break. I know a lot of like recent studies say like it takes multiple years to recover from burnout, and so for myself, actually going through the burnout that I went through for multiple years trying to build where the Marma J Foundation is now, I actually have a schedule now where I know that I'm still arguably burnt out, and I just kind of build through that. So, like I said, I do this live stream once a day, and I try to, but when it doesn't happen, it just doesn't happen. I try my best to kind of again, I'm almost always in Telegram, like 20 hours a day, but I might just not be there for 6, 8 hours at a time, and things will just get missed. And so I try my best to train other people in the Marma J community to kind of help out when I'm not there. And a lot of it is just community over time, being able to support and but over while I was burnt out, I was very cognizant of okay, when I'm unable to do this, there needs to be community to pick up the slack. And so I need to make sure that an extra hour is spent every day in this burnout to train other community members to kind of help out. So now I guess I feel blessed, of course, but I'm lucky to have like a great community around me where like for example, I'm taking my first vacation in like my fiance. We're about to get married in 2 weeks, and we've never been on vacation. Uh, and so we're the first time in 4 years that I've gone on vacation. I'm going to be, and I'm sure Sasha, it's not actually going to be without work. I'm sure I'll be checking things. I even told my fiance for our honeymoon, for example. She was like, "You can only use your phone while I'm sleeping." So I actually get up like every day with the sunrise. That's part of like so how do I not get burnt out? I get up when the sun rises. I work when I feel like I can work. I take rest when my body tells me I need a rest. And at night, when I pass out and I've done too much, I definitely just turn everything off and sleep. So some nights I'm in bed at 9:30 and I've passed out and there's things to get done, but I know that there's always more work to be done tomorrow. The chain will keep on ticking regardless of what I do or don't do. Um, but yeah, and I think I don't know, I think when we build like that, it's more sustainable at a personal level, but also on a community level. No one person can go forever, and so it's just not worth it, in my opinion, to get too burnt out. But yeah.
and I wonder also, like when you started looking back on the day in Ethereum, and more recently into how people build communities, as well as you building your community, what are some of the things that you found as like really golden nuggets, kind of like tips of for founders and other people how to build community? Because this ends up being like very important in Web3, but I feel like still many people don't really understand how to do it.
Yeah, I think one of the golden nugget I'm going to give because I just see so many projects miss it and it's so confusing for me, um, is just like build in the open. Like I like not like okay, so that seems so obvious in the Web3 space, built in the open, but still so many projects in the Web3 space don't have open GitHubs. Those GitHubs aren't publicly posted on their websites, like on the front page of the UI or on the like somewhere publicly where the community can see it. And so even as a non-tech person who might interface with this, even as a dev who might interface with this, there's no way to just be like, I want to come in and see what's going on. So that's like just number one. Like, please, if you are open source, put your GitHub somewhere. Even if you're not open source, maybe there's some things you can share. Please try and share at least those. So that's like number one. But also when it comes to sharing, also just sharing updates. If there's no updates, you can just share how your team's feeling. I think there's nothing wrong with just saying, "Hey, we're still shipping. Uh, we're just coding, man. We're tired. We're coding. There's a bear market. Our treasury got halfway wiped out, but we're gonna keep building." Saying that once a week is much better than saying nothing, in my opinion. Um, and even if you're so busy and you're so stressed, there's probably a gung ho community member who would love to come out there and craft some announcements for your team. So I don't think there's any really much of an excuse to not say anything. But I know a lot of times it could be a bit daunting. I know I get lost in building sometimes, and I'll just be building and working for like days and days, and I'm like, oh, I haven't like messaged in the community chats. Whoops, like, my bad. And so building in the open also has to do with building a culture of building in the open, in my opinion. So, for example, like we do have multiple chats, but every time, for example, I try and share information to my community, I always have levels of like where it's going to go. So I start with, okay, I want to send this to the public chat with like a few hundred members in it. And maybe it's not, if it's not reasonable, or I can't, the word is escaping me, but if it's not appropriate, sorry, for that chat, I go then to the contributors chat, which has like maybe 50 members in there, and those are people who are like actual core contributors that want to help. So it's like more like bounties from the ecosystem, maybe like educational resources, like token economic papers, where like maybe the average person doesn't care, but contributors might dig in. And then if something's a little more personal for the community, maybe it's not for contributors, it goes to the council chat. And then if it's even more sensitive, it'll go to like the Cloanka chat for myself and my fiance. But I'm always thinking like, how can this information be shared as publicly as possible? So that even if I'm building and I forget to chat in the public chat for a few days, anything that I find relevant along the way, I'm gonna just put it in there. And then the people in the community know, okay, Chloe's still doing something. She's still building. She's working on DeFi today, or oh, here's her live stream that she worked on. And yeah, I forget to share my live stream from time to time in the chat, but again, I'm always trying to. But even then, I actually have contributors now who cut up my live stream and will share highlight reels. And they have incentive to like on their own share that in the public chats. And we have other community members who are incentivized then on their own to like we have a Flying Rhino Guild we work with to then take all of the community created content and then market that. So the idea is just by us doing what we're doing, we try and build a culture of everything gets shown in the open, and so we don't have to actually sit there and work hard at um, like keeping the community engaged and keeping them to have some sort of buy-in. It's pretty natural. People just kind of check our chats. They feel like they're engaged. They know what's going on, and that's probably the simplest way I think of ensuring that you can keep having people that come to your chats and they know what's going on first of all, and potentially how they can stay involved.
Hmm. I wonder also where would you send somebody who is interested in digging into the space but doesn't quite think yet where to start, or whether it's for them, like what would you have as a kind of advice for those kinds of people?
Ooh, good question. If someone wanted to dig into the space but didn't know if it was for them, well, if they were a creative, I'm going to have to do a little self shill here, because currently the Marma J Foundation has an event going on where anybody, as long as they have a near account, so if you don't have one, you could message in the Marma J chat and we'll get you one. But anyone with a near account can log into a DApp called 3XR, put together a virtual gallery of other people's NFTs. So you don't have to even make your own. You could just be like, oh, these four NFTs are super cool and they define love, support, and positivity to me. So it's again to you. It's very subjective. It's kind of whoever's building the gallery defines what love, support, and positivity is to them. Puts these four NFTs together. They can request the Marma J DAO to mint this NFT, right? That might sound like a lot, right? A lot of big, crazy things going on. But again, if you want to see if this stuff's for you, this might be a good way of seeing. Our DAO council will vote. Hopefully, will vote yes, and your NFT gallery will be minted. You can share it with your friends. The link, you can show them how cool this is. It's a multiplayer gallery, so you can like be in there with your friends and see them looking at all the stuff. And then you could actually list it on sale on a DApp called Mintbase, an NFT marketplace, for 2.19 near. And you could request the Marma J DAO to collect it. The Marma J DAO would love to collect any definitions of love, support, and positivity that the community members make. And you can earn a little bit of near. And arguably, we are collecting these galleries from anyone in the community who wants to make one. And so until we run out of money, until we run out of near. So that's a great place. Of course, though, there's other places where people can kind of get involved and test things out. I think personally, I love the Pixel Dapps ecosystem. So if anyone's into like gaming or like wants to see what it might look like to kind of get involved with gaming on the blockchain or gaming on Near, you can kind of log into Crypto Heroes, for example, try and like gear up your character and like try and beat a dungeon and see if that's fun. I personally enjoy it. I play every single day and I have for like months. But yeah, if you enjoy that too, you can, we have a Marma J rating party as well. So we have like a few dozen people, a couple dozen people who earn a couple Marma J a week, raiding and trying to beat raid bosses together. And yeah, so there's lots of fun ways to get involved. You can make NFTs. You can kind of get together with friends and raid and get involved with gaming. You could be a DJ if you'd like. You could start farming if you want to like farm on ref and farm on whatever. We've got hopefully some educational resources coming out as well about getting involved there. And, yeah, so we have a lot on marmaja.org where people can kind of just get involved at a very like minimal level and just kind of touch their feet in and see if Web3 or Near is right for them. And honestly, once you're there, I feel like once you're in the Near system for like an hour or two, you'll probably be talking to like a couple dozen other people and find a few dozen other chats. So yeah, you'll probably have if you enjoy it, you'll probably have no issue finding a community. But if people want to get started, I would definitely say, uh, jump in, get that first Near wallet. You could DM me, Chloe the Dev, on Twitter or something. I'll drop you a link. I think on Twitter, in my link, you can actually click the link on my Twitter bio, and it'll give you an NFT and a Near wallet. So if you don't have a Near wallet, click the link on my Twitter, and you should be able to get one.
That's amazing. And lastly, where can people listen to your live streams?
So if you go to marmaj.org and you scroll to the bottom of the page, there's a little tab for YouTube. Click that there, and we have a playlist with all of my streams there. I try and go live 7:30 a.m. Eastern every day, but it happens at all times. That rarely happens. But yeah, looking forward to people hopefully coming out.
All right. Well, thank you for coming today, Chloe. That was amazing conversation.
Oh, of course. Thank you so much for having me, and looking forward to seeing what comes of the interview. Thanks. See you at NearCon.